This is the first of what we hope will be a semi-regular series of videos documenting our adventures and misadventures aboard our 40-foot motor vessel as we explore the world from the water. A lot of planning and preparation went into making this voyage a reality, and we managed to record a small part of it. People have often asked us what inspired us to do something that some might call crazy, like attempting to cruise around the world in a small boat with a small diesel engine. A plan like this obviously doesn't get hatched overnight, and it is almost surreal that we're actually doing it, living on the boat full time, and are about to begin the first part of our journey, which is to head up the west coast towards Alaska for the summer. I'll try to share a little bit of our background, hopefully without getting into too much boring detail. Jen grew up around boats, and her dad kept a sport fisher in Redondo Beach in Southern California. They spent a lot of weekends on the boat and took longer trips to Catalina Island. I had been on boats with friends of my parents a few times when I was a kid, but it was really Jen that introduced me to the boating lifestyle. We decided to buy an old cheap boat to live on in San Diego when we were in our early 20s, mainly with the idea of being able to save money on rent. But we actually did use the boat a lot too, ended up taking the boat out on trips to Catalina Island and Ensenada and on offshore fishing trips. Eventually, Jen finished school and got a job where she had to wear suits to work, and the small hanging lockers on that first boat just wouldn't cut it. We moved off of the boat, but at that point, the boating thing had gotten to us, and we kept the boat as a hobby. Since then, we've always had a boat of some type, including a 22-foot C-Dory that the company refers to as a trailerable trawler, and a twin diesel sportfish style boat that was a great boat, but not exactly fuel efficient to run. We've known a few people that have cruised around the world on sailboats, but as neither one of us knows how to sail anything more than a little sabot, that didn't seem to be a viable option. While less common than sailing, people do cross oceans on small power boats, so when it came time to look for the next boat, I was intrigued by the option of getting something that we would someday be able to take on longer trips than just up and down the California coast and to offshore islands. A Nordhavn 40 that was for sale up on Vancouver Island in Canada looked like it could be the perfect boat, and after thoroughly checking it out and negotiating the purchase, my friend Dan and I took the boat down the west coast to San Francisco Bay over the course of a week. Jen and I had always toyed with the idea of dropping everything and taking off to cruise indefinitely, but it was always a years down the road idea until we both decided we'd had enough of the rat race and decided to actively make that dream a reality. Once we made the decision to go, it was time to wrap up our lives on land to prepare for life afloat. First, we had to sell our house. It sold in a short 14 days, and then we were faced with the huge challenge of getting rid of everything in the house. Moving from a house with a large garage for storage packed with years of accumulated stuff was no easy task. We moved stuff to the boat, then back off, as we figured out how much stuff would fit comfortably on board. We arranged and rearranged until we were satisfied that all of the essentials and nothing else had a home on the boat. Our new nomadic lifestyle means that Cassidy's teachers from second grade into at least the near future are now mom and dad. Homeschooling, or boat school as we call it, will be a mix of formal curriculum that we are using from the Calvert Academy, supplemented by experiential learning wherever we happen to be. In addition to dealing with getting rid of our house, cars, motorcycle, and everything else that didn't have a use on the boat, there was the task of getting our new home ready to go. The boat was in great shape when we bought her, but as the saying goes, there's always something to do on a boat, and preparing for a long-range journey like this adds a little more to the normal task list. The boat was due for a haul-out for normal maintenance like anti-fouling paint and replacing zinc anodes, so this was scheduled at the local boatyard. We also took care of some more longer interval things like replacing the seals on the active stabilizers on the bottom of the boat that help prevent the boat from rolling too much in a seaway, removing and cleaning out the keel cooler that removes heat from the coolant in the main engine, and replacing one of our sonar transducers that had been working intermittently. The old motor on our Boston Whaler had seen better days, and as we are planning on anchoring out a lot in remote locations while cruising, having a reliable tender is important. I installed a new fuel-injected Yamaha, which should be reliable and easy to find parts for throughout the world. One of the final things to do before we left was to make sure that all of our safety equipment was in order. There are plenty of more fun items to spend money on a boat, but even if we weren't heading up to the cold and potentially rough waters of the northeastern Pacific and inside passage of Alaska, we would still want to make sure we are prepared for any emergency.
Okay. And obviously, since the raft in itself kind of lands right on top of the painter line,
the life raft needed to be repacked to ensure that it would still inflate when needed and to replace expired supplies that are packed inside. We dropped it off at Sal's Inflatables in Alameda, and the guy who runs the place, Vicente Sanchez, was nice enough to allow us to watch while they unpacked and inflated the raft and point out some of the key features.
Does the canopy have to be inflated manually? No, it goes off with the cylinder too.
pressure relief valve on the lower tube, and then you have also pressure relief valve on the upper tube. Just to dry out the floor. You also have a little cushion kit.
We had a few final things to do before we were ready to leave. Our boat holds 920 gallons of diesel, and we had to take on about 500 gallons to fill the tanks. We loaded a few more essentials on board and made sure everything carried on deck was secure. Cassidy's last day at school was right before her spring break. Jen and I wrapped up at our jobs, and we were finally ready to go. Had a small going away party on our boat and overflowing onto the dock, and a lot of Cassidy's friends came to see her off. They even did a toast with sparkling cider. After waiting a week and a half for a weather window to allow us to make it up the coast, it was time to head out. We spent our final night in San Francisco Bay on a mooring in Sausalito, and I took one of our paddleboards to shore in a rainstorm for some final supplies from West Marine.
We already did it here! See you next time in Crescent City.